All right, so please feel free to join us on that panel discussion. As I've mentioned, we've got some amazing speakers. We've got speakers from the UAE, we've got speakers from South Africa, and we also have a speaker who's representing both from UK and from Pakistan. We have attorneys, investors, and financial advisors as speakers on that particular session. As I've mentioned, Mr. Ashraf Ghaja, a very well-known celebrity, who will be moderating the event on my behalf, and be taking you through the actual process of asking those pertinent questions. So for those of you who would like some questions to be asked directly by the moderator, please feel free to send them to me beforehand, and we'll make sure that those are asked by the moderator. Alternatively, if you are joining the session, please make sure that you type out your questions in the chat and you ask those questions to them as well. But today is about our session, particularly on post-traumatic growth, and are you a survivor or a casualty? So let me take you quickly through the brief introduction, and I'm not going to spend too much of time on this. Those of you already know me. My profile is up in the front, but more importantly, like I said, is that we want to live, my philosophy in life is to live passionately, but yet purposefully. And I believe that what we are doing through these sessions is that we have become purposeful. The messages I've been receiving lately has been, Hawa, this has been phenomenal. I listened to X, Y, and Z session, and I've grown and I've developed, and I just want to say thank you. So for me, that is purposeful. Even if we just change one life here today, that means that we have been purposeful in our actions, and that is what Orbrix is all about. When I founded Training Excellence in South Africa almost 21 years ago, I always had the belief that yes, one day we will be able to move our agenda forward in terms of growth and development, and also in terms of what my amazing special angels and my children have taught me, is how to live purposefully. And this is what today is all about. So if I had to describe myself particularly to you, it is basically a woman who's able to live passionately but yet purposefully in life. Those are some of the trainings that I've mentioned. So we've got some complementary programs that are running for CBR in our academy. We've got our normal training that's running for all the doctors and nurses that are out there who has to comply in terms of their radiation protection officer training, the dental surgeons who can't go on training and their certificates are expiring. We are running these sessions online. So it's good to be able to still continue business as normal, but of course with a different. And we've made it exciting. So in the Dubai region, for example, people that are joining us, we are actually delivering lunch to them. So if they can't attend our lunches because it's full days training, and we're actually having it delivered to them. So we're trying to make it as fun as possible. We try to have a Starbucks coffee delivered to them. When the lockdown was there, we couldn't do that, but now we're able to do that. And then, of course, we've got sessions running, which is our Business Academy and our Leadership Academy. Some of you, in fact, most of you have been joining us for most of those sessions. In fact, this afternoon, we have a program under Health and Safety that's also running, which is based on change management. And in this coming week, those of you involved with incident commands in terms of systems that are involved with regards to incidents that are happening with regards to health and safety, we've got our incident command system that is running on Thursday. And of course, our coaching and mentoring is going on continuously. So for those people that are actually struggling in terms of both life coaching and business executive coaching, we are running online coaching sessions for you under a very strict security protocol where everything is confidential. We're making sure we abide by those rules and regulations. Those are some of the clients that we have trained over the last few years. We are also registered with Commensa. We registered with the American Board of NLP as well. And of course, as you can see, a lot of the clients are both from Africa and of course the United Emirates as well. Just some housekeeping, please. If we can all, if your mic is on unmute, please make sure that your mobile phones are then on mute. Otherwise, you're welcome to mute yourself until you're ready to talk, and then you are able to open up and have a chat and ask questions. Please, we want it as interactive as possible. I'm sure Yolande doesn't want to be talking all the time. We would love for you to be able to talk to and ask a question. Here's your opportunity, ladies and gents. You know, for some of these sessions that our volunteers have volunteered on, sometimes they charge approximately, I mean, in dirham terms, about 400 to 500 dirhams. In rand terms, you are looking at approximately 1,200 rands just for an hour. So here's an opportunity, and I'd like to thank our volunteers, all of them who's participated and come in. So it wasn't just I and my team who put this together. A lot of volunteers came forward and said, how can I be part of that? And today your host, who is Yolande Toohey, is one of those volunteers. So Yolande, we just want to say thank you to you. For volunteering your time, your effort. And yes, some of us are talking about the same thing, but of course, when it comes from a different person and a different methodology, we each learn something different every single day. Yolande is a director and founder of YT Consultants. She's a certified life coach and a executive and a business coach, a certified NLP practitioner. She's a facilitator, an assessor, and a moderator. Now she's speaking my language, especially coming from the South African Qualifications Authority. We know that being in the training field, you have to basically be a facilitator, assessor, and moderator in order to function in the government sector as well. Her passion and drive lies in impacting, empowering, training, and coaching individuals, corporates, entrepreneurs, women, and mostly youth as well. And I think this, for me, Yolande, where the big plus comes in, and I'm going to be excited to host you on one of our next panel discussions we will be having shortly, is where we will be addressing how to manage the youth. We'll be addressing school issues, homeschooling issues, and I'll definitely be engaging with you to be able to sit on our panel for that as well. So with a hearty welcome, Yolande, thank you for being with us, and I'm going to now hand over to you. If you can give a brief introduction while I hand over the presentation as presented to you now as well. All yours, Yolande, and thank you for being here. To those of you who just joined us, welcome to the session, and I'll be personally chatting to you into the chat as well. If you have, just a reminder to those of you who have joined, your control panel is there. Sorry, something I should have actually discussed with you under the housekeeping. You've got your mute button. Please, if you have some background noise coming out from your side and you're aware of it, please mute yourself so that later you can unmute whenever you need to chat. You have a camera, you're welcome to switch it on or off. You also have a button which is a hand. As you can find it, it's under attendees, and it's in there that you can raise your hand. So just a quick check from everybody. If you're welcome to be able to just raise your hand just to make sure that you're all with me, and you can see. Thank you, Tasneem. I see you've raised your hand. Thank you, Bilal. Thank you, Bianca. Thank you, Brandon. Fantastic. Amika, Shakirat, Tasneem, Warren. Awesome. Those of you who are not ready for that, please, if you're not sure about it, chat to me in the chat line. Ask your questions in the chat. After certain slides, I'll wait for Yolande to complete, and when she completes a slide, I will raise your questions with her. If you would like to ask that question directly, which I would rather prefer because you get it up, your point across directly, please feel free to raise your hand and say, Hawa, I have a question. I will then make sure that you are unmuted and you can ask your question at the appropriate time as soon as Yolande finishes a particular slide. So Yolande, over to you to be able to introduce yourself, and I'll be handing over presenter mode to you shortly.
Thank you, Hawa, and thank you very much for that introduction, and welcome to everybody that's joined this morning for this session. And like Hawa said, it's just a great opportunity to be able to give back to the people and just be able to assist during this COVID period that we're all going through. Hawa, have you handed over yet?
I have, yes, you should receive it now.
There we go. Okay.
Good, and you can share your screen. Awesome. All right, so we just want to confirm that everybody can view Yolande's screen. It's a lovely picture with a post-traumatic growth survivor or casualty. Yes?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Okay, perfect. All right, so thank you very much, as I mentioned, and welcome to the workshop on post-traumatic growth, survivor or casualty. I say casualty with great respect, for we've all been at some point in our lives where we felt where things have become too much, where we do not have the resources or the know-how, or the simple energy to actually get up and be able to do things or get through that traumatic event or life-threatening trauma that we've experienced. We all face varying degrees of trauma, adversity, and other stresses. But the key thing is how we adapt to these life-changing situations and emerge even better and stronger than what we did before. That is what actually makes us survivors. My aim this morning is to give you guys some guidance and an opportunity to pause and reflect and gain some perspective of how to become resilient when you're faced with trauma and adversity in the future. So before we begin, I'd like you, I'm sure everybody has either somewhere where they're taking notes, a notepad and a pen, or if you're doing it electronically, you're welcome to use that as well. Just to, excuse me, I'd like you just to draw a tree. And this tree needs to represent you and your current life. So what I'd like you to do is in your tree, each aspect and element of this tree needs to be depicted. So the roots, the trunk, your branches, and your leaves. Those of you who would like to add flowers and fruits, you're more than welcome to do that. I'm not expecting you all to be artists. You'll see later on in my presentation that I'm definitely no artist. I'm more of a stick person drawer. So I'd like you to take the next few minutes, draw your tree that represents you and your current life. And once you've completed, please can you just in the chat group indicate either with the raise of your hand or say done, then I know when to move on with my presentation.
Okay, so how much of time would you like to give off to them, Yolande?
About 2 minutes, a minute or two.
All right, so I've started a timer. A time up is on your screen. So the moment that timer gets to 3 minutes, we will stop.
Thank you, Hawa.
Just making sure you're all clear what needs to be done, yes?
All I need is a tree that represents you and your current life, and each of the different parts of this tree needs to indicate. Your roots indicate something that you can relate to, the trunk, your branches, and your leaves.
Those of you, I have typed out in the chat as well, just a brief summary of what is required if you've just managed to join us or if you managed not to get that part from Yolande. Great, so Kantha is done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kantha. Amika is done. Renee is done. Annalise is done. Kavina is done. Warren is done. Bilal is done. Miraj is done. Tasneem is done. Brandon is done. So I'm just going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you have about 12 more seconds. Candice is done. Shakira is done. Fantastic. Nazmira, thank you for joining us, Nazmira. Nazmira is done. Awesome. Time up.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for drawing your tree. As Hawa has mentioned, she has put it in the chats. For those of you who have just joined, you can just quickly take a few minutes to draw your tree and indicate each part that represents you. As we go through the presentation, I will ask us to refer to our trees from time to time, and there will be times when I'll also post some questions to you. If you can either answer that in the chat or just jot it down on the side of a tree or wherever you're taking notes as we go along. So what is post-traumatic growth, survivor, or casualty all about? It is about reframing your mindset and really understanding who you are and where you're going to.
Okay, Yolanda, just checking your sound, just to make sure that your sound is clear, yeah? Okay, I think I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, all right. Is my screen still fine, the presentation?
Yes, yes.
All right, perfect. Okay, so as we go through, there'll be 3 phases that I'll take you through. The first phase being mindset recalibration. And here it is the little shifts and adjustments in our thinking and in our mindsets that needs to change and recalibrate. The second phase is building resilience. Those adjustments and shifts that we've made in our mindset, how do we maintain them to become a survivor
You
and
seem to be losing your...
Hawa, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I think it might actually be Hawa. We'll just wait for her to come back online.
No issues. Carry on. It's just that I'm losing
Okay.
your sound now and again. Thanks, Yolande. You may continue. Thank you.
Okay, no problem, Hawa. As I mentioned, building resilience, it's all about those shifts and adjustments that we've made in mindset recalibration and how we maintain that to build a stronger personal within us, inner selves, and then also strengthening and becoming a survivor and choosing to be a survivor rather than a casualty. The growth is how we've adapted in these changes that we've made during the mindset recalibration in building the resilience that are now visible in our lives and also in adapting for any future crisis or adversity that we may be facing. The first phase, as mentioned, is mindset recalibration, and the basis of understanding what mindset recalibration is this quote, which says the paradox of trauma is that it has both the power to destroy and the power to transform and resurrect. So if we're looking at a balancing scale, and on the one side we see that it is the destroy element, and the other side of the scale is the power to transform and resurrect. Now, dependent on which way this scale tips is why we come out of trauma or the way we handle different elements of adversities. It can and has the power to either destroy us or it has the power to transform and resurrect us so that we come out stronger, so that we come out with a little bit more competence in dealing with any future adversities and challenges that we face with. And as we know, trauma affects each of us in different degrees. And this picture says 1,000 words. Each of these little pictures, I'm sure you can relate to. Feeling like your world's been turned upside down, the financial crisis, some of you are facing retrenchments or job losses, some are in debt and not sure, certain how or where the next income is coming from, or whether you are going through divorce. Some of you are actually depressed. How do you deal with these different elements of trauma and adversities? And how the key here is taking you through these elements so that you can come out a survivor and not remain the casualty that some of us face on a daily basis. And the key is also understanding what trauma is. What is trauma? I think if we understand what trauma is, it's better for us to cope and handle these adversities. All trauma is, it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. And what does that mean? We react the best way we know how, with the resources that we currently have. If we do not know any better, we cannot react to that situation or that adversity any differently. Unlike stress, which briefly affects the human psyche, stress you can overcome. It's not as deliberating as or diminishing as trauma is. Trauma diminishes our ability to manage problems we face, causing total breakdown. And that's why you found a lot of people that go through traumatic events, traumatic challenges in their lives, and they're unable to actually come out on the other side. They do not have the resources, the know-how, or the knowledge, or even the simple energy to get up, to take the next step. And if we understand that trauma is just something that is unpredictable, like we saw in the previous picture with COVID-19, none of us could have predicted that we'd be sitting in lockdown now and having gone through the last 2 to 3 months, sitting at home, not having any social interaction with anybody else. And that's what it is. It's, do we have the resources? Do we have the know-how to actually deal with these abnormal situations that life has to offer? Before I go to the next slide, I'd like to ask you a question. And here you can either add it into the comment section or you can write it down on wherever you're taking your notes. Again, please, whatever pops into your mind, whatever comes to first, is that's what I'd like you to write down. Who are you? So whatever comes to mind with me asking that question, pop it in the comment section or the chat section, or wherever you're taking notes. First thing that comes to mind, who are you? Next question, should we take away whatever you've written down there? If we take away your title, if we take away being a parent, being a teacher, a manager, an exec, a coach, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever your title might be, if we remove that, who are you? Would your answer still be the same? This, in understanding and how you actually answer this question, when unexpected things happen in our lives, this is what happens, is you actually get to understanding who you are and identifying your identity. What have you built your identity on? What is the foundation that you built your identity on? Our identities are shaped by our thoughts, our beliefs, the decisions that we make, and ultimately that's the behavior and the way that we react to certain things. And we have different individuals and environments that actually help us to shape who we've become. Our parents, our friends, the education system, our society as a whole, the environments that we're in, be it in the workplaces, be it our social gatherings, the role models that we've identified with. Each of these individuals and environments have all influenced and impacted who we are, and this identity that we've come to know as us, come to know as you. Though in understanding that each of these things have impacted us, as why we react to the way when we're faced with adversity and stresses in life. And when we pause and reflect and really analyze the things that make up the identity that we better identify with, that's when we can cope with adversity that we face and trauma that we face. In asking those questions, how do we look at the world? We don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. So in understanding who we are, the identity that is shaped in us becoming the person that we become, if we take our trees and we compare it to the questions that I've just asked, and we're reflecting on how we've actually drawn our trees, is it the same in terms of the questions and the way you've answered the questions? Do we see ourselves, or do we see things as they are, in essence, really as they are? Or do we see things as we are, from our backgrounds, our culture, our values, our morals, and every single individual and environment that have influenced and impacted us into the identity and the person that we've actually become? Once we understand that, and that sometimes we actually adopt people's traits, people's characteristics, the way people react to certain situations, and we've made it our own. It might not be who we actually are right now, but we've identified with it, and it served us for the period that we needed it, for the adversity that we faced, or the challenge that we faced. So when we understand that, we can understand that some of these things might have worked at one stage, might actually have served us in the past, but they might not be serving us right now. It's for us to take the time to reflect and review and understand who we are, who we truly are. And in doing that, we also need to understand that post-traumatic growth is about a process of self-discovery and self-exploration, in understanding that how we overcome the adversities and the challenges that we face when it feels like our inner universe has been shattered. So how do we actually do that? And it's all about taking the time to understand who we are. The person that you've depicted, or the way that you've depicted yourself in that tree, is it really who you are? If we take away everything else and we go to the inner core of who you are, is it still reflected? Are you still coming up with the same answer to the question of who you are? Once we understand that and better explore and discover our inner universe and what actually makes us and shapes us into who we are with our beliefs, our values, the background, our thoughts, will help us to understand our behaviors and why we react and respond to certain situations the way we do. Now that we've understood a little bit about mindset recalibration and understanding a little bit more about us and the questions that that raises, we now can move on to building the resilience and maintaining those shifts. Yes?
Sorry, just before we move on to building resilience, I just want to make sure that there aren't any questions or comments from the audience. So based on that last section that Yolande has just completed, do we have any questions or comments for Yolande about that? I mean, some pertinent points there that has actually come up that in the chat box. So would anybody like to share in terms of your comments or your learnings over a period of time? The lines are open, so if you'd like to unmute yourself, please, you're more than welcome to do so. So let's just give everybody a few seconds to see if you'd like to respond.
Thank you, Hawa.
Good. Is there anyone who has a question or a comment? We're all good thus far. Jason, thank you for joining us. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any. Nazmira. Nazmira is typing in there, as a psychometrist with underlying psychological knowledge, I think the points you made are excellent and realistic. Thank you, Nazmira. Okay, good. So if there aren't any questions or comments, then you're more than welcome to continue, Yolande. Please, if you have any other comments, you're welcome to type it out. Bilal is saying we see things as they are. Our tolerance level gets higher. Absolutely, Bilal. So maybe, Yolande, if you want to even comment on that in terms of the more you see as things are, how does your tolerance actually get higher, and perhaps maybe why?
Absolutely. It's all about, and this is where tolerance and emotional intelligence actually comes into play. It's understanding that the way we see things is through the background, the knowledge that we've acquired, the awareness that we have, the value system that we hold ourselves to. It's not necessarily the other person's identity. When we look at things, we look at it from our understanding. And if we look at it from a lens, sometimes the lens, and we could possibly use this example, and many of you probably heard it, where this lady had been doing her own washing, hung her washing, and kept looking out the window doing wash the dishes and saying, you know, can't believe that my neighbor's washing is so dirty. And when is she ever going to really wash it so that it's clean? Just to realize by somebody, her husband actually telling her that, you know, perhaps you actually need to clean your window, because it's your window that's dirty, and because your window is dirty, you actually cannot see that her washing is cleaner than yours, or is brilliantly white, blowing in the wind. And it's the same if we have to do the comparison, it's exactly the same. It's what reference points are we using to actually understand somebody else? And that is why some people are more resilient than others. Some people are better able to cope. And it's not that they have more resources or more awareness. It's just, and yes, sometimes it is that they have more awareness about a certain situation, but the degree of that trauma affects everybody differently. And what resilience and what inner strength I have will help me to actually overcome the challenges and adversities that I face.
Good, fantastic. Lal, I'm sure that that helps in terms of reiterating what you've said. There are a few more comments and 1 or 2 questions. If I can quickly point that out to you before we move on to building resilience. Shante actually says that she totally agrees with him, Nazmira. She's looking at this from a background in psychology as well. Yolande is really speaking from the value of the psychosocial aspect. So I think that was a comment. There are 2 questions, if I can raise that. One is from Miraj. Miraj is asking, could you please share an example of a tree or your tree? Could you share that as an example? And while you're thinking about that question, if you can also handle the next one, is coming from Renee Miller, is what served us in the past might not necessarily serve us now. Okay, that's a comment. Okay, yeah, so it's just the question from Miraj at the moment about the tree.
Okay, perfect. And I absolutely agree with Reen in terms of what serves us in the past doesn't necessarily serve us. And that is why that inner self-exploration and self-discovery needs to happen, so that you actually understand that some of the things that you've added on and that you've taken on might not be serving you anymore. And it's for you to take and literally leave them behind and move forward. With regard to the tree, I have gotten my tree or drawn my tree, and if you don't mind, I'd like to share that towards the end. And the only reason for that is that I do not want to influence you in terms of your understanding and how you've actually depicted yourself. Is why I haven't shared mine at this point in time.
Perfect. Thanks, Yolande. We'll make sure that Miraj, that is shared at the end. And I think no more questions or comments. We can now continue. Thanks.
Thank you, Hawa. So as we go through building resilience, we need to understand that in order for us to build a resilience and during the traumatic experience that we faced, is for us to embrace the trauma survivor condition. And what does this mean? It's actually understanding that when we're faced with adversities or stresses in life, it's taking the decision to embrace that emotional roller coaster that we're on, the emotions that we face from a guilt perspective, and anger, frustration, fear, sometimes shame, whatever those emotions that you're currently experiencing, you need to embrace it. You need to, because only once you've embraced and acknowledged them can you actually move forward. Because if you don't, what happens is later on, at another point in your life or another trauma situation or adversity that you face, and it might not even be as big as some people might perceive it to be, it will all come up again. And those same emotions that you haven't dealt with will actually become stronger. And that could be the point where it actually destroys you, where you cannot get up and cannot move forward. So we need to acknowledge that these emotions that we feel have the ability to enable us or disable us. It's up to us in terms of how we deal with it. And building resilience is helping us to maintain those shifts and those adjustments we've made in mindset recalibration. So once we've embraced that trauma survivor condition, we can then build into rebuilding a stronger version of ourselves, a stronger version of who I want to be, and shaping my life into the person and the life that I want to lead in terms of being happier, finding more joy, seeing the possibilities of life, and seeing that in events there's an opportunity for growth, there's an opportunity to see possibilities and opportunities, and there's an opportunity to actually just see all the negativity that come with those events, and where you're actually allowing the trauma to destroy who you are. And the picture is what I'd actually like to bring your attention to. In the picture, you see a cat, and the shadow of the cat is actually a lion. And that is such a beautiful picture in understanding who we are. On the inside, remember that we need to understand that post-traumatic growth is an inside-outside approach to health and well-being. So if we are stronger within us, we're better able to cope with any adversity that we face. And if we change the way we feel and we behave, we can do that by changing our thoughts and our thinking and our mindsets. So as much as on the outside we look like a cat, but on the inside we actually feel like a lion, and that whatever comes our way, we are strong enough to build and to cope with the adversities that we face. And this is all, the foundation that this is built on is our attitude. What attitude do we have? What attitude do we see life as, or look, the lens that we use to actually look through life? Do we see it in a positive light or with a positive attitude, or do we see it with a negative attitude? Everything that we've experienced in life, our attitude determines our next step. Our attitude is what actually makes us take steps forward or steps back. And if we're comparing that scale, the balancing scale between the trauma and the ability for it to destroy who we are, or the ability for us to rise up and actually become stronger, is dependent on the attitude that we deal with when we faced with adversities. How do we exercise this, and how do we become stronger in building resilience? And like every athlete or professional athlete out there, or even you in trying to be healthier from a physical point of view, we have to exercise. We have to get up and make a decision that in order for me to be healthier physically, I need to exercise, whether it's walking, whether it's running, whether it's actually bodybuilding, whatever you decide it to be. That's what helps you to remain fit, healthy. How do we exercise our mindsets? And the way that we can exercise our mindsets and develop our mindsets is by following the 4 steps. First step being consciousness. How conscious are we in understanding the present and where we currently are? Are we sitting in the past, in the present, or in the future? Past being sitting with regrets, constantly looking back on what we've experienced and blaming others and feeling how unfair life is, and that things could have been different, and having those regrets actually take away our ability to get up? Or are we constantly sitting in the state of planning for tomorrow, planning our futures? When we understand the present and understand our consciousness, none of us could have predicted COVID-19, and that if we looked at it last year, that 2020 would be the year that we would remember, where every single person had an opportunity to fulfill their plans or was cut short because of COVID-19, where we're actually sitting in lockdown right now, where we restricted in terms of our movements, where we do not have the ability, some of us, to actually earn an income. That is where, as much as our plans, and we can plan for the future, sometimes we actually just need to be in the present. Remain conscious, and whatever decisions we take now shape that future, and be flexible enough to understand that things do change. And it's how we cope with those changes that will actually help us to become more resilient. Excuse me. The next step is awareness. How aware are we? Like with the attitude, do we have a positive attitude? Is our awareness positive, or is it negative? Does our thoughts control us, or do we just blurt out certain things? Are we just reacting in terms of what is being said? Do we think before we say things, or are we just responding to the situations that we face, or the adversities and the crises that we currently facing? When we build our awareness and understand that the basis of it all depends on the way we look at life and our lenses that we use, positive or negative. The third step is curiosity. And when I mention curiosity, it's how curious are we to understand each other? How curious are we to be patient and willing to adapt and be flexible and change our plans? Like I mentioned, COVID-19 was unpredictable. Are we still planning our lives in terms of what is to come? Or are we still using the same plans that we used 2 months ago? Or have we actually adopted the ability to be flexible and change and adapt? because that is the only constant right now. There's lots of uncertainties out there. But have we started shifting our mindsets to being flexible? And yes, there's lots of fear and uncertainty. And the antidote to fear is curiosity. Taking an event and looking at it and going through the emotions and accepting and acknowledging those emotions and saying, yes, this is a traumatic event. Yes, COVID-19 is something that none of us could have predicted. And yes, it's taken me out of my comfort zone. And I'm unable to perform or do what I actually would normally do. However, what can I take? What is the learning that I can actually take out of this? There's lots of positivity that can come out of COVID-19. And that is, none of us could have predicted that we have the opportunity to take quality and to spend quality time with our families, that we can actually appreciate the little things that we can do with our families now, with our kids now, with our partners now, that we weren't able to do before. If we look at our lives before COVID-19, we lived a life of constantly running, constantly on the go, constantly chasing this goal that we were trying to achieve. And every new day, that goal changed because we changed our plans. We wanted to achieve more. There's nothing wrong with wanting to achieve it. However, if you're not conscious and present in the moment, you actually lose that enjoyment that you feel. A very good friend of mine asked me recently, how much fun do you have? Do you have an opportunity to have fun? Or what do you do for fun? And it took me a moment to reflect and actually understand, how much fun do I have in my life? Do I actually take the time to do the things that I really enjoy? Or is it just this goal that I'm constantly chasing and the adversities that I'm constantly trying to overcome and coping with? We now have an opportunity to do the reflections and the reviews. And doing that with the curiosity and being curious and saying, maybe if I look at it from this perspective, or if I look at it and I turn it literally upside down in terms of the way we view, is how we get through and we become more resilient. Because the more curious we are, the more awareness we have, and the more present we are in the decisions that we take will shape our futures going forward. And the last step is courage. Are we courageous enough to accept and forgive, to move on and to build the self-esteem and self-confidence of those around us? Do we see each other's strengths and uniqueness and actually say, how can that best fit us? How can I use it to collaborate, to partner, to actually make sure that the society that we're trying to build is a better society? I'm actually happier because I'm able to accept the differences, the diversity that we currently live in, and see them as opportunities for growth. Or do we sit there and constantly reflect on the negativities and how different we are, and how I'm unable to forgive, I'm unable to accept certain things that have happened? If we live in that, it's very difficult for us to move forward. And another question that we can ask ourselves, how empathetic are we? Are we able to empathize with others? The connections, the relationships that we've built with friends, with colleagues, with family. Are we actually able to utilize that? Courage takes a lot. Same like building your resilient mindset and changing and shifting the way we think. Sometimes we sit there, currently, especially now going through COVID-19, alone at home, feeling alone. And sometimes some people are actually alone. They do not have partners. They do not have kids that surround them. And their minds is the only thing that's actually helping them to survive during this lonely time. Do we have the strength, do we have the courage to actually reach out and say, I need help. I need just an ear to listen to, just somebody on the other side that I know that I'm not alone. It's okay to reach out. There are people to support and to assist us. It's understanding that do I have the courage to actually pick up the phone and say, I need help? Or can you just listen to me? I just need somebody to talk to. And that's understanding these 4 different steps will help us in making sure that we build that resilience that we actually need to cope for any future adversities that we face. And it takes us to the next slide in terms of, do we have the courage to change?
Yolande, just before you move on, just a few comments. So there's some lovely comments. Those of you can actually read them there. Shanta is saying something fantastic, something that I just realized as well. Please read the comments. I think they're very good. There's a comment, I'm alone during this lockdown period, but I have my cat, so I'm still doing great. So that's seeing the positive behind it. Thank you very much. I think we fear judgment from others, absolutely. So just, if we can just go back one slide, Yolande, I'd just like for people just to reflect just for a minute, and maybe just type out in the chat as Yolande is taking us through the next slide, but how many of you are spending more time in which one of those? Are you spending more time in your consciousness, your awareness, in your curiosity, or to spend more time in terms of becoming more courageous? If you can perhaps maybe just type that, what was your awareness out of this whole COVID-19? What did you get out of it? For some of us, you know, we've learned to be able to, for example, become, you know, more resilient. Maybe for some of us, we've learned how to deal with some of our, I call stuff that we've been dealing with over the last few years, and we haven't been able to have the time to deal with it. So what have you learned? What's the awareness for you? How many of you have become more innovative, more curious about what there is? How many of you are spending that time in curiosity? What have you done? And for those of you who've become very courageous to do certain things very differently, to start reorganizing your life, what have you done? So just quickly take a minute in the chat while Yolande is talking through her second slide, the next slide. What have you done in those areas? What have you learned in those areas? What have you become creative with? It will be great to have that, and I'll be sharing those as well with all of you after the session as well. Thanks, Yolande.
Thanks, Hawa. And absolutely, I agree. It's taking a pause or a minute just to understand and identify which one of these steps you're currently in. And you will constantly be bouncing between these steps as you move along. So it's not to say that you'll actually stay in one of these steps at any given time. It's also important to understand that COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to actually pause. And what we do with this pause will determine where we get to and how far we actually grow from this life-changing event that we're faced with. And just going on from step 4, the courage to change. Change is not easy. Change is one of the most difficult things that we can do as human beings. And I think fear has a lot to play when it comes to change. It's fear and it's doubts. The doubts that set in to say that I can't, I'm not strong enough, or I don't have the resources, or I'm not competent enough, or I don't have the ability. It's making sure that you don't allow the doubts that constantly go around in our heads to actually paralyze us, where we cannot move forward. And fear. A lot of fear is now when we hear COVID-19 or when you're going through job losses or retrenchments, I'm sure it elicits emotions of fear, and where you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day or a month from now. Understanding that all fear is unknown of what's going to happen in the future. And if you build a stronger mindset with an inner resilience, you are better able to cope and take the decision and make the choice that whatever happens, I know I can do it. I know I can take the step. And I know that I have the support of those around me to actually lean upon when I need people around me, or when I need upliftment, or when I need motivation, or when I need some positivity. Because sometimes, as much as we are positive and we do have resilience, it's always nice to hear from somebody else and to understand that my challenges is no different to somebody else's. The way I feel is sometimes exactly the way somebody else is feeling. and the challenges and the adversities that we face, somebody else has already been through it. And that is why I mentioned the degree and the levels of adversities and trauma that we face is different for everybody. And sometimes your advice can actually help me to better cope and manage my current situation that I face. And we now move on to growth. I don't know if there's any questions before we move on to the next phase of growth. Hawa?
All right, so everybody is unmuted at the moment. Are there any questions? There are lots of lovely comments that are coming in here in terms of what people have learned. Perhaps maybe Candice, if you want to comment on one or two of them, that would be great. Are there any questions from the rest of the group? If anybody would like to unmute themselves, question or a comment or something you would like to share based on what Yolande just spoke about with regards to resilience. Yes? No? Here's your chance. Ask now or forever hold your peace. No? No questions, no comments, but there are lots of comments in the chat box. I'm not going to go through all of them. I will capture, as I've mentioned, most of them, and we will also send that through to you in your forwarding email after you've logged off. Joanne will be able to do that for you. So if there aren't any burning questions, you may now continue. Thanks, Yolande.
Thanks, Hawa. I'm glad that there's so much comments going on, and yes, I will definitely be reading through them after the session. Going on to growth. Now that we've reflected and paused and had an opportunity to understand what we need to do to recalibrate our mindset and what the steps that we need to take in order to build our resilience through that and ensure that we maintain the changes and the shifts that we've made, we now move on to growth and understanding what growth is. And I'd like us to really ponder and understand and accept this quote. Don't forget you're human. It's okay to have a meltdown. Just don't unpack and live there. Cry it out, then refocus on where you're headed. And I think this is so pertinent, especially in the time that we're living in now. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel sorry for ourselves sometimes. It's okay to blame things and to live through the regrets. It's how we actually take that and move forward. It's how we decide to get up. Are we going to get up and move forward, or are we going to allow ourselves to mellow through that uncertainty, through the negativity, through that fear, and stay there? We all go through various things in life, and we all have our days where we cannot get out of bed, or the sadness or the uncertainty literally is destroying us, where we don't actually want to move forward. It's okay. What is the next step that you will take to actually get you past that? And that is where you will now be able to see the growth that you've made had you done the previous two phases and really taken the time to make those shifts that you needed to make. Understanding what the big picture is. Do we now understand that if we look and we take our tree that we have drawn and we compare it to everything that we've gone through in the first two phases, do we understand that our thoughts is what evokes the emotions and the feelings that we actually experience? That those feelings and those emotions and that roller coaster of how we deal with that is what drives our actions. And the actions of whether we actually move forward or whether we stay in the past, or the actions or the reactions or the non-actions of staying in bed. Do we stay in bed, or do we get up, make our bed and move forward and take that step, even if that's the only task we do for the day? That is one step closer to making sure that I'm moving in the right direction, that I'm actually saying I can overcome any adversity, any trial, any crisis that I'm facing. And understanding that when we understand that it comes from our thoughts and it plays through our emotions, our actions, and that is what determines the results and the outcomes. And ultimately, the life that we want to lead, whether we're happier or whether we stay sad and unhappy and in that emotional roller coaster of frustration, anger, fear. Do we understand how important it is to start with the first phase of mindset recalibration? And that very first or second slide that I took you through in terms of identifying what trauma is and understanding that all it is an abnormal situation, it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. And then also understanding that when we move into the phase of identifying who we are and what shapes us, we can then achieve better results and outcomes in our lives. And that we do make mistakes, but it's okay. The next phase is zone identification. And I'm sure here you can identify with one of these zones. The first zone being comfort zone. That is where we feel safe and in control. That is where we don't want to move forward. We don't want to allow changes to happen. The second zone is the fear zone, where we have a lack of self-confidence, lack of self-belief, competence in ourselves and our own ability, where we come up with excuses for everything that's happened, where we almost do the blame game, or we also take on other people's opinions. It's not ours, but we allow what people are saying around us to affect us. For example, I know there are many people that are currently facing retrenchments right now, facing the possibility of not having a future job, or not knowing when COVID, or when the lockdown is actually lifted, that I have a job that I can go back to. Some people are taking pay cuts right now because companies just can't cope with not being able to trade. Understanding that when you take on other people's excuses, it may not be yours, and that is what actually allows that fear and the doubts to set in and actually take control. Some of us, I know I've been through retrenchments where, yes, I might have had 3 months to understand because I was in a senior position and I needed to go through the process of getting my staff and understand and letting them understand that this is coming and that there is a retrenchment because of the circumstances within the organization. That going through and being strong for my staff, I thought I actually dealt with understanding the fear, the doubts that would come, and that I was better prepared than when my letter came to me and when it said that you are actually now being retrenched and your last date of employment is effective, let's say, the end of this month. When I opened that letter, I did not realize how that would impact me until that point. And I needed to understand that I had to go through those emotions of feeling like I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know what my next step is, but I needed to also build my own resilience in understanding that, yes, as much as this is an adversity that I'm facing, or an uncertainty of what's going to happen, I do have the strength, I do have the ability to move forward. I can take that next step into changing and also look at it. I looked at it as yes, I had two choices. I could go back into the corporate world and send out my CV and hopefully get a job, a better job than what I was currently doing, or going into another organization where I could grow and learn and make an impact, because that's my key, is trying to impact and change and positively help others. Or I could have taken the step of going out on my own and starting my own business, where I would not have had that opportunity had that retrenchment not happened. Because we always say, I need the stability, I need that income. You always make excuses as to why you can't take that next step. What's holding you back? And once I made that decision to actually start my own business, the responses and the opinions of others, and there were lots, some supportive, some not. Are you sure? You know, the economy is not stable. You know, there's things that could go wrong. You've got a son, you've got a husband, you need to balance the finances. How are you going to cope? And if I'd allowed those doubts of others and my own personal excuses, and yes, a little bit of my own a lack of self-confidence, because this is a new road and journey that I'm taking, if I'd allowed it to actually take control and make the decisions for me, I would not be where I am right now. And I would not be happier in the life that I've chosen, because I would have allowed fear to literally control and paralyze me. In moving from the fear zone, we move into the learning zone, and in the ability to make decisions and coping with challenges and the choices, and understanding that the decisions and choices that we make helps us to better cope with the challenges that we face. And that, yes, it's all part of growing and learning. When we are open to learning and that we do not know everything, we open ourselves to having the support where others can actually give us advice or help us to better cope with certain points that we face going forward. And then the last identity zone is the growth zone. Yeah, it's actually taking ownership and taking accountability for the decisions and the choices that we've made during the learning zone. As when I made that decision to go on out on my own, the situation that I find myself in, where there's uncertainty from an income point of view or the growth of my business, I need to take accountability and responsibility and ownership for that. I can't blame somebody else. It's my decisions. But once you make a decision and you're present in that decision and you decide that I've looked at all the consequences, I've looked and I've planned for all the things that could possibly go wrong or could possibly affect my future, I'm better able to cope because I've planned as much as I could and as much as I can. And in doing that, you also created yourself a bit of a fail-safe mechanism to help you with adversities and challenges that you face. And more importantly, the last one in the growth zone is the response able. How able are you to respond? And it takes us back to that scale where trauma can destroy us, or it can actually allow us to get to take that next step, to grow, to transition from being in the fear zone to actually learning and becoming a survivor. Our responses is determined by our thoughts and our decisions, and as we go through the adversities that we face. Again, the zones that we face, if you see, we go through from the comfort zone and between the comfort zone and the fear zone, it's actually the casualty phase. And that is where we allow ourselves to become casualties when we faced with adversities and stresses and challenges that we cope with. When we stay there, we make a decision and a choice to remain a casualty. Once we move out of that into a progress mindset, and a progress mindset is just acknowledging that I'm going to make small shifts, small changes in the way I think to help me enable myself to actually become a survivor, that you become a survivor, because there you're opening yourself up to learning and again to growing. And remember that as much as we go through these different zones, and I'm sure you can identify which zone you currently find yourselves in, you will bounce between the zones, and it's okay. It's okay to bounce between those zones because that is what life is. We could not predict COVID-19. The same, we cannot predict what the future holds, what tomorrow holds, let alone next week or a month from now. However, if we have better awareness with the decisions that we make and we open ourselves to learning, we can then grow. Mistakes are okay.
Yolande, just a reminder in terms of time, I just need to just confirm, I know there are some people who have meetings and appointments. Before you leave, just send us a quick note in the chat. And I'm sure Yolande's got about, 5 more minutes, Yolande, to be able to round up? Yeah. So just 5 more minutes, if you can just bear with us, that will be fantastic so that we can take your question and answers as well. Thank you, ladies and gents. Thanks, Yolande.
Thank you, Hawa. All right, so the key thing here is the success steps. What steps can I take to actually become more successful in growing to become a survivor? It's firstly, the first step is your awareness. How aware are we in terms of our decisions? The next step is the choices, the daily choices that we make. It's being able to take that step. And lastly, will determine the results. So as I develop better awareness around myself, why I do the things that I do, I'll make better choices in the steps that I take in order for me to get better results. And there you can see in that picture, it's actually a picture of growth. So the more awareness I have, the better daily choices I can make, or decisions that will result in better outcomes, and eventually achieve a better life. In life's journey, there will be lots of obstacles, lots of paths that we have to choose. And yes, there will be fear. We just have to trust that we've used and we've got the awareness and the ability and the competence to actually get us through those moments of fear. By building the relationships that we have, fostering wellness, being flexible in terms of the plans that we make, and being self-confident in our own abilities and our own competence, exercising our mindsets, seeking help when we actually need it, and more importantly, finding our purpose. Why we do the things that we do. Are we doing it for the right reasons? And it goes back to that identity slide right at the beginning. Identifying who you are and the choices that you've made and what's shaped you into the person that you're being. And you need two things. The two things that you need is time and optimism. If you've got optimism, you can overcome anything because it means that you have a positive outlook on life and the journey that you want to eventually lead and navigate on. This, for those of you who asked about my tree, this is my representation of my tree. And yes, it's not perfect. I'm not an artist and I'm more of a stick person. But this is just the way I see myself and the way I've represented me and my life. My roots is my faith, my purpose, my values, my ethics, my moral compass that I use to help keep me grounded and to help build the foundation that I have, so that I can be stronger and grow and learn on this journey that I'm navigating on. My trunk is my family. And my family could be people that have, and friends that have actually now become part of my extended family, where they support me, they keep me grounded, they keep me constantly checking my purpose, my values, my ethics, and help support me to make sure that what I want to achieve, I'm actually on the road to achieving. The branches are my friends, my colleagues, my fellow coaches and fellow mentors that also help me on this journey. They give me advice, they support me, they help me in terms of constantly tweaking what I need to tweak in order for me to become a better person, in order for me to be able to impact the lives of those that I come into contact with. And my leaves are my clients, the delegates that I train, the candidates that I train, and the general public, because every single person that I come into contact with will have some impact in terms of what I leave with them. So what I leave with them can either flourish and grow and become the leaves and eventually the fruits and the flowers, if your tree becomes as a fruit-bearing tree, that I want them to become. Or it can actually, where you can actually now see the visibility in terms of what you've started and the foundation that you come with, and see whether there's been growth, there's been changes that have happened, and you've had an impact, or I've had an impact. And on the one side of my tree, I've actually taken it into the different phases that I've covered during the session. The first phase being mindset recalibration. If I understand and know what I and who I am, my identity, what keeps me grounded, and what is my purpose. And the purpose is basically asking your whys, understanding why you do the things that you do. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I want to impact people? And my why is serving others and being able to help others in whatever way that might be. The second phase is building resilience, and your family and those that you really hold dear to you will help you with building your resilience better than anybody else out there. And the last phase is the growth phase. That's where you can now see that your foundation in terms of your mindset has actually helped you to get, and as in impacting those in the public space that you get to. However, I'm not sure how we are for time here. Hawa, are you still there?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. So we've actually gone over time. We've 15 minutes over time at the moment, and I know there's a few people that would need to leave. So in conclusion, so then I can actually open up the lines for any question and answers. Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine.
All right, good. So we open it up to any questions, comments. I see a lot of you had held on. Virtual hugs to you, Hawa, and to Yolande. This is a topic I'm deeply passionate about. From Shanta, thank you, Shanta. Kanta, thank you very much. Amika, it's great to have you again. Lots of comments in there. I'll be copying all those comments in and sending you through, some of which, with your permission, of course, we can actually post. Are there any questions or comments that anybody would like to unmute themselves and ask any questions to Yolande? The lines are open. I have unmuted everyone. So just to make sure that if you have any question or answers, yeah? Thanks, Amika. Good. I think people are shying away today from questions. Tasneem, nothing from you today? Shakira? Nope. Okay, so
Thank you,
Miraj
Hawa.
is
No
saying
questions from our side.
Thank you, Tasneem. Awesome. Miraj is saying this has been an absolutely amazing session. Thank you so much, Hawa and Yolanda. I will now be a regular attendee on your sessions. Thank you, Miraj. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. It will be great to have you with us. I have an official commitment, and stay blessed. Thank you. Awesome. Kavina, awesome session. Feeling refreshed. Shakira, thank you for a wonderful session. Nazmira, brilliant presentation. Thank you, ladies and gents. Yolande, any final comments from your side before we close off?
Just thank you very much for your comments and for the questions that you've raised. I wish you all the best. Take care and be safe. And yeah, well, all the best on your journey into navigating life.
I just final comments. Thank you very much, Yolanda. Thank you. Final comments from my side, ladies and gents, on behalf of Orbrix, on behalf of Training Excellence South Africa and Orbrix Dubai, we'd like to say a hearty thank you to all of you who've been diligent listeners, who's been there and supported us fully. We'd like to thank you. And also, more importantly as well, please watch out for all our sessions that are coming up. We have tomorrow we have a financial sector coming up with Nazira Turkey. Please do join us on that, taking you through your financial issues or questions that you might have during COVID and post-COVID. On Thursday, we have an amazing session as well by Yoki, who's going to be taking you through in terms of your online presentation. So one to definitely look for, watch out for those emails. And then finally, we have our panel discussion coming up on on Saturday, being moderated by Ashraf Garda and myself. So please feel free to be able to join those sessions. Joanne, who's on the session, will be sending you reminders of those with registration links. I look forward to seeing you all on the other side again. So thank you very much. I look forward to meeting with you in person soon when I am in South Africa. Inshallah, all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yolande, thank you very much. It was most helpful, and I think a lot of people have benefited from the discussion. The recording of all of this is available. If anybody would like a copy of the recording, please email Joanne and she'll send you a link for the recording. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bye-bye.